Welcome to the Westminster channel. A very special guest now. It's Mr. Nigel Farage. Nigel, how are you?
Thank you. Well, I'm very well. Yes. I think I'm doing better than the Conservative government is right at the moment, which is, since we last spoke, sort of collapsing confidence and belief in the competence of the government, as I think really highlighted by the events in Dover yesterday.
Yeah, well, look, we've got to start with that, of course. 409 migrants in a single day crossing the channel illegally to reach the UK via small boats, significantly breaking the previous single-day record. Hundreds intercepted in the water, while others managed to land on beaches, according to the Home Office. Nigel, what do you make of all this?
What is the collective noun for 409 migrants coming into Dover in one day? I'll tell you what it is. It's a humiliation. Complete humiliation. I mean, ever since this became a story, and I say that because in the earlier part of the year, despite numbers rising quickly, mainstream media wouldn't even touch it. When I first started going out and making those films, they did not want to know. Now they are covering it a lot more, I'm pleased to say. But we've had the Home Secretary talking tough. And we see pictures in the newspapers. Oh, there's a new RAF spotter plane. Whoopee woo. Oh, look at this drone. It wouldn't matter if you put what's left of the Royal Navy in the channel. If the rules are that once they've crossed the 12-mile line, they're entitled to a 4-star hotel, 3 meals a day, free dental care, free health care, and 40 quid a week cigarette money, then, nothing's going to change. And all really that Priti Patel does every time she speaks on this is to highlight the impotence of the British government. The criminal gangs are running rings around us, and I repeat, we are being humiliated.
Yeah, Nigel, I think it's important to give context to this. As we said yesterday, 409 in a single day. If we go back to 2018, the number of arrivals of illegal migrants via small boat was 297 for the entire year versus 409 in a single day yesterday. Why do you think this has escalated and got worse and worse?
Two reasons, really. One, that virtually no one ever gets returned now. So that's a big sell for the traffickers. And number two is, of course, they're using Brexit. They're saying, this time next year, it might be impossible. This time next year, when Britain's left the transition period and it's outside the Dublin regulations, they might just return you all to France. And that, again, is a really big sell for the traffickers. And that situation's been there for the last 6 months, very, very clearly. It explains why the rise in numbers is as quick as it is. And so we have to do a couple of things to address this. Number one, change the legislation from the Blair period, which makes us so ridiculously generous to those who come here illegally. Two, scrap the Dublin regulations, but not wait till the 1st of January to do it now. Say, look, we are an exiting state of the European Union. We have an emergency here. We're no longer going to abide by them. And three, and this is the hard one, we need to have political will. The kind of political will that Tony Abbott displayed when he was Prime Minister of Australia. Now, we understand that he met Priti Patel yesterday to talk about these things. But even if she takes this on board, will Boris Johnson, will the Metro Liberal, will the man who, when he was Mayor of London, more than once, who advocated complete amnesties for illegals, will he do a personal U-turn on this and start to understand that 97% of Conservative voters are concerned or very concerned about this issue?
I just want to turn to legal migration as well, Nigel, because it went slightly under the radar. But net migration, the latest figures for the year end in March 2020, a staggering 313,000 net, according to the Office for National Statistics. And gross, it's 715,000 people moved to the UK in 1 year. What do you make of that?
It's a huge number of people. It's yet another huge demographic change in the country as well. Legal and illegal immigration are now at all-time highs under a government that was elected to get Brexit done and to take back control, that promised us in its manifesto an Australian-style point system, which people took to mean would be a lot more selective about who came, and whose manifesto promised to reduce numbers overall. The government's in trouble over exam results. It's in trouble over its quarantine rules. It's in trouble over these things because of competence. But it's actually beginning to get into trouble over now a matter of trust. And this is about trust. It is linked inextricably to the Brexit vote. The immigration issue caused David Cameron's government massive headaches. And if Boris and co don't grip this, it'll do for them too.
I want to turn our attention now to the Brexit negotiations. Michel Barnier yesterday with an astonishing speech. Barnier saying government proposals would give Britain an unfair economic advantage in this deal, automobile, aviation, road haulage, farming and energy sectors. And there was me thinking that the EU was saying there would be no advantages from Brexit. But the key line I want to pick out is he said, without a common framework on state aid, the UK government would be free to hand out subsidies at will. Wouldn't that be terrible?
Well, yes, I mean, free to hand out subsidies, free to cut regulation, free to start catching a few of our own cod again in the English Channel, free to choose our own relationships around the rest of the world. I mean, that is what Brexit's all about. And of course, you realise that all the arguments, all the economic arguments in favour of the single market were actually all socialist arguments. They're all anti-competitive arguments. And that's what the single market's there for. It's to stop competition. It's to stop small and medium-sized competitors from coming into the market and genuinely competing. And that's why we're leaving it. Look, I will say this for Barnier. He got Boris last October to sign up to a deal that was very little different from Mrs. May's one that got rejected. All right? There was a change. The word backstop went. Northern Ireland was cast off into a different constitutional space. Backbench Tory MPs said, isn't it absolutely marvellous, the Ian Duncan Smiths and all these people, Jacob, I mean, unbelievable. And Boris came back to the country and said, it's a great deal, it's oven ready, right? But by the time the election came, Boris changed his tune. Now, it could be that the Brexit Party had something to do with that. But by the time the election came, it was, we will not have regulatory alignment. And ever since then, it is, will become an independent state. So Barnier has a right to feel slightly miffed because a series of promises made to him by Boris were then overridden by the general election result. But in terms of our democracy, that's what matters more. What matters more is what the British people voted for. They voted clearly for us not to have regulatory alignment. And that means, provided David Frost sticks true to his position, that it's Barnier that will cave in the end, and not us. But hey, you know, I'm trying to put my faith in this government, although I've been let down with the Conservatives on Europe many times before.
Nigel, I've got to tell you, the overwhelming response from people that watch We're Sponsor on this channel, thousands and thousands of people saying, Michael, we've had enough, we need to walk away. Where do you assess the possibility, the probability of no deal? And do you think that's something the government will follow through on?
Well, I mean, you know, the financial market analysts tell us it's 50-50. Some say it's 55% no deal. Some say it's 55% there'll be a deal. I would say it's probably 2/3, a third that there will be a deal, because it's the nature of governments to want to have a deal. It's the nature of the EU to want to have some sort of deal. So I think, I suspect that a deal will be done. I suspect that it's one that I won't be wholly pleased with, but I suspect that it's one that won't give too much daylight either. Otherwise, Boris is finished. He is finished. Not just finished as Prime Minister, but finished in the eyes of history. And I do think the government know that, which is why I don't expect them to completely collapse. Okay,
and just turning our attention now to the BBC, I mean, more madness. We've seen the decision on the proms, the U-turn. Again, Nigel, overwhelming majority of people that watch this channel have just had enough of the licence fee. They do not recognise the BBC from what it used to be. They've had enough of it. Where do you assess we are with the BBC? And do you think the licence fee can really sustain for too much longer?
I think the Royal Britannia moment was a really interesting moment. We'd kind of put up with Churchill's statue being defaced, put up with the cenotaph being desecrated, put up with historical statues being chucked in harbours, put up with this onslaught that said unless we were openly supporting a neo-Marxist organisation that wants to close down the police force, that somehow there was something awfully wrong with us. And most people ran and hid away from all of this. But we reached that moment with last night of the proms when overwhelmingly people just said, enough, We've had enough of being told we should hate ourselves, had enough of saying we should get rid of our history. We're going to stand here and say we want the words sung. And the majority of those in favour of the words being sung against cancel culture was about 6-1, all right? About a 6-1 majority. And the BBC have done a U-turn. They are going to sing the songs. And Tim Davie, who's come in as the new Director General, at least on this, has made a good start. However, he's got an organisation filled with thousands of woke warriors. I think the idea that one guy at this late stage is going to turn the whole organisation around, well, tell you what, don't hold your breath. And I think the licence fee now looks completely outdated. And I don't think the BBC deserves to survive in its current form. Do I think some form of BBC should exist? Actually, I do, and I'll tell you why. On the world stage, the BBC still is a big part of brand Britain. So I do think, having a BBC World Service, having these things still matters. But to have the BBC dominating our national life, our national news agenda, is just not fit for purpose in the 21st century.
Now, Nigel, you've made a few predictions over the years, one or two that have actually come true. You obviously saw and backed Donald Trump in the previous US election. Now, we have scenes in America of far left extremists literally burning cities. And you've come out and said, yet again, ignore the polls. You think Trump's going to win. Where do you assess the US election race?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that of those that vote on November the 3rd, Trump will win a big majority in the Electoral College. I've no doubt about that. I think that Biden finds himself in a terrible bind. He can't criticize Antifa or elements of Black Lives Matter, who are very extreme, dangerous elements, because they're quite a big part of his activist base on the left of the Democrat Party. So Biden, is in great danger of looking weak in the face of law and order. And if I was living in a suburb of a big American city and I had a mortgage and a business and 2 kids in their teens, I'd vote Trump, even if I don't like his style, because I want to feel safe living where I am. The one dark cloud here is this early mail-in voting. We don't know the scale of it as yet. We hear of electoral districts on the West Coast where there are potentially more voters than there are people alive. We've seen abuses of the postal vote system in our own country again and again and again. So the one dark threat, the one dark cloud to Trump winning is this early mail-in voting, the results of which we might not know until weeks after we get a result on the night of the 3rd of November. And goodness me, I mean, I hope and pray it's not the case, but if Trump was to win on the night and then lose 10 days later, goodness knows where America would be.
And Nigel, finally, you've still got, of course, lots of public support. A lot of people concerned about illegal migration, concerned about the state of the EU negotiations, concerned about the sort of culture wars and the onslaught against our country in so many ways. What is your message out to your supporters out there that are concerned about all of these things?
It feels at times, although we're onto a complete losing battle, it feels like the other side are just steamrolling us aside, that the cancel culture is unstoppable. But what you've seen with the Rule Britannia moment is the turning point of this debate. And people, I don't think any longer are going to be ashamed or scared to stand up for British identity, British heritage, British culture, and to say, do you know what? Our history is our history. We can't change it. But overall, we're damn proud of it. And that's the end of it.
Nigel Farage, thank you so much for joining Westminster Channel. And guys, remember to subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss future videos. Nigel Farage, thank you very much.
Thank you.